Alrighty, guys. We're going to have you guys give me a mic check real quick. See how the volume is. And if everything checks out okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Just give me a couple comments there in the chat. Said loud and clear, perfect sound. Just a solid yes. Very good. Well, I had a panic attack this afternoon because trying to set up these headphones and the microphone kind of threw me for a loop. We want to welcome everybody for joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about manual transmission options for your Coyote Swap. And not necessarily what's going to be the best option, what's going to be one better than the other, so forth, and gearing and so forth, but just what you can use. Let me turn down my my headphones real quick. They're pretty damn loud.
They're like, damn technology. They love it. They say this sounds real clear. Very nice.
That's good. That's good. That makes me happy.
Yeah,
all over. All right. So, before we get rolling, thank you for joining us tonight. This is PBH Live, episode number 10, specifically about manual transmission options for your Coyote Swap. We're going to be talking about some product announcements and answering some tech questions and general questions from the chat. And what we'll ask you to do also is, if you haven't done it already, is subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the, hit the notification bell. And make sure you select all. That way you don't miss any of our broadcasts. It's like delayed and it's throwing me off.
Then take it off. Because, you sound really good.
All right, good. So I sound good?
You sound really good. So you don't have to hear yourself.
I'll throw that off.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
He's talking to himself.
It kind of sucks.
You're good. You sound really good.
But anyway, sorry. A little distraction there. The headphones were throwing me for a loop there. I'll have to work on that later on. But yes, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. Hit the notification bell, hit all, that way you don't miss anything. You can join our newsletter on our website. The website is pbhperformance.com. The hashtag to find us at is hashtag PBHequipped or Coyote Swap. In general, I tag all of our posts with that stuff so you can find it easily. And then where you can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram. A lot of our content is on there. We're trying to pick that up a little bit, working on some new videos for the channel right now. We're actually working on something that pertains to tonight's episode, which are our starter shims for our aftermarket bell housings, flywheels, and flex plates and stuff like that. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight as we go through the progressions of the broadcast. We'll say hello to some people here real quick before we get rolling. Wild Horse Garage, thank you for joining us. Robert Whedon. Yep, the coffee is good. My favorite coffee mug here with me. I think we're drinking. It's like a French roast from Whole Foods.
So do you not need any sugar?
That has sugar in it.
But is it enough?
It's not enough. But here's the problem: the coffee we're drinking is very dark.
Where is
so it? Un poco amargo.
Okay.
I think I'm done. It's not the Lucky Goat. It's the other one. It's in the brown bag. Yeah. Anyway, that's a coffee break there. YOLO is in the house, or Alejandro Flores, Lund Racing Calibrator. And Bobby Lutz immediately with the hat questions.
The hat questions?
Well, Bobby, it doesn't hurt what you're doing right there. I did order hats this week. We're going to have plenty of hats here soon. I'm working on how we're going to get those, either in some sort of a marketplace on our website or something where you can just pay in the super chat and then I'll get a hold of you from there. Unfortunately, with the super chat and YouTube and how that money gets distributed, it's a little tough to do it that way because they literally take like half, I think, some cases. So I may not be able to do that because then the price gets a little wacky, but we'll find a way to do it. PayPal will probably be the easiest thing directly to me so I can get you and then get your shipping address and get a hat out to you.
Many different colors.
We're getting this gray on gray monotone look, and then we're going to do the black on black as well. Based on the last show, that seemed like what everybody was kind of hunting for. The colors are a little tough to do because there's, well, a rainbow full of colors that we can choose from, and I don't want to limit everybody to a red or a green or a black. So black on black, gray on gray, ghosted out, that'll be the options on the hats, and then we still have our shirts and so forth available on our website. John W. Jr., thanks for joining us, man. 2000 MCR, always, thanks for joining us. Renner, 595959, thank you for joining us. Doug Fidelk, I think I'm butchering that, but Fidelki? Fidelki? Thank you for joining us. Raheem Wilson, Tony Turbo 91. Let's see who I built for speed. Yep. Dane Austin, Peter Kopek. 671 Cobra. Tech game is too strong. Sounds good though. Thank you for the feedback there, and hopefully you guys aren't getting too much feedback from this new mic. All right, so Coyote swaps, manual transmission options. A lot of the times what we're getting questions about are MT82 6-speed manual transmissions that are found behind Coyote engines 11 to current production. Now, that transmission, nothing wrong with using that transmission as far as how it's designed to operate. The issue is translating that to the car that you're swapping. Now, Fox bodies, since they range most of our customers, 79 to 04 cars, it's a problem. 2-3-fold, I would say. As far as getting it bolted up to the Coyote engine, no problem. And I will say ahead of time, any transmission that can bolt up to a modular Ford 4.6 or 5.4 liter engine can be used on your Coyote engine. The bolt patterns are all the same. That being said, of course, every transmission that was available behind a 96 to 2010 Mustang GT can then be applied to a Coyote engine. There'll be some different variations and so forth we'll go through throughout the show here, but the MT82 in particular presents some issues. Shifter is number one. It is a remote mounted shifter. The remote mounted shifter not only is going to be a little bit of an issue as far as mounting it in your Fox body, but the position of the shifter is a problem because it's pretty far back from where the opening is, where the T5 would be coming through, or the 45, or the 3650, or your T56 would be coming through. Now, there's no tail shaft housing adapter or a different mounting position on an MT82 to play with, so the only thing you're left to do is to get a custom shifter from either MGW, and I think there's another Cobra kit car company, and what they do is they take the length of the shifter and they shorten it. And I'll show kind of like cycle through on some of the pictures on an MT82, and in there you'll see naturally that there is nowhere to mount a shifter directly into the body of the transmission. It's all remote. You can shorten that shifter and go to as short as possible, and I still believe on a Fox car you're going to have trouble getting it lined up with the console and where it comes through the floorboard. The other issue you have is potentially floorboard clearance, depending on what car you're swapping. Now, if it's a Fox body, well, we've all massaged the floorboards on a Fox body. They're fairly paper thin. Rubber mallet can make as much room as you would need. In some cases, you may have to even cut it. And remember, on Fox bodies, 79 to 04, if you have a manual, there is a bubble or like a riveted on piece that goes on top of the factory floorboard. So you can cut away underneath there quite a bit to then give you some extra room to play with. Once you have it in there and it fits, and you figured out somehow how to get a shifter to work, you still have to deal with the drive shaft. And the drive shaft, as you look at some of the pictures of the MT82, there is no slip yoke. You're not going to find a slip yoke on your MT82s, your factory 6060s, or the 3160 that's found in the GT350. Out of all of those, the only one that you can change the tail shaft housing on is the 6060, because you can get a 6060 Magnum. You're not going to find that option for an MT82. So drive shaft has to be CV style. You're going to want to get that car on the ground with as much weight, finished weight as possible, so you can get a good ride height measurement of it from flange to flange. That way, when you call your drive shaft manufacturer, they'll know exactly what the range, the allowable range will be, so you don't hit the gas wrap the axle, and pull the drive shaft apart at the CV. Now, on a Fox body, probably not as big of an issue, let's say, versus a early Mustang, 60s Mustang, anything with a leaf spring suspension, because you get a ton of axle wrap out of it unless you have some sort of a limited suspension, 4-link, ladder bar, that kind of stuff. Even the Shelby track bars and stuff like that would help. We know this because I watched a good friend of mine and a guy who used to work for us, Harvey Hutch himself, built his F100. He went out, it was twin turbo, he had a 60/60 in it, and he had a CV style shaft in it, and unfortunately he hit it on I-95, he axle wrapped the hell out of it and pulled the drive shaft into 2 pieces. So seen it happen on our dyno, which was kind of dangerous too. 60s Mustang, it was done, built, ready to go. All it needed was carpet interior, and sure enough, brought it to us. He had a custom drive shaft made by a local guy. It looks like he used tractor equipment to do it, because that is found in that industry. And the thing came apart and poked through the floorboard and destroyed the exhaust, and luckily nobody got hurt. So things to consider when it comes to the MT82. Now, strength-wise, on a stock Coyote, there's going to be a lot of opinions when it comes to the MT82. They do have a fairly bad rap, especially early on with the 11 to 14 cars. There were some upgrades done throughout the years, but they can be built. They can handle the power if you do get them built. Guys like Calamer, Ben Calamer Performance, he does a lot of upgrades to them and actually has a new gear set for them as well. My friend Tony at Astro Performance also offers rebuilds and can get you rebuilt units. Both these guys are excellent to deal with, and they usually have transmissions available. If not, you can send one to them to have them go through it and check it out. Used pricing on them is pretty cheap because cores really aren't worth much more than about $150 to $300, I would say. But when you're dealing with a rebuilder, they may have a higher price on that because they need to get one back so they can continue to rebuild transmissions for other people. So junkyard prices are not core prices. Keep that in mind. MT82 overall, is the juice worth the squeeze? I don't think so. You may get it with a donor powertrain, which is great. It might save you some money in that front, but I think the amount of time you're going to spend massaging things, figuring things out, and then the cost of the drive shaft, that may end up leaning you towards getting something more traditional for your car. Now, most of the cars we're swapping here are older, and they have slip yokes, and some of them you can even reuse the transmissions out of them, which we'll go over here in a second. But keep that all in mind, because even though it may came on that cranker pallet and you want to use it, when you factor in a custom drive shaft, usually to the tune of $700 or $800, a shifter that you're going to have to spend $400 or $500 to get and then modify, and then seeing how much fitment you have to play with as far as floorboard and different chassis and so forth, it may not be worth trying to get all that to work when you can spend a little bit more money, get a transmission that you know will fit, maybe can reuse the drive shaft that you already have, or at least modify the one you already have because it's not a CV style. It may be worth it to make that change at that point. Now, we'll go over some of those changes here in a second. The first transmission I'm going to look at is the T5. Now, most of the guys that are doing Coyote swaps that I get information back from is everybody wants a 6-speed. And to me, it's kind of personal preference or tuning preference. But the 6-speeds versus a 5-speed, a 5-speed can do just about everything you want to do with a Coyote swap. I run a 5-speed in my road race car. There's really no point in having a second overdrive in that case, and gearing is more of a tuning thing. So you want to look at what your combination is and what you're planning to do with it, because rear gear ratio, the ratios inside the transmission are going to play a part in what you select and what you want to go with if you have specific driving goals. Street, strip, overdrive is a driving goal. Road racing, drag racing, same thing. T5s are available. They're small, they're tiny, and they can be built to withstand the power a Coyote can put out. Now, can it handle 1,000 horsepower? Probably not. There aren't a ton of manuals out there at the factory level or even rebuild level that could do that stuff. So keep that in mind when you're selecting your transmission as far as...
You're like, I'm done with listening to myself.
Now I can hear the headphones from off the wall, basically 2 feet away. So T5, I ran a T5 in my car. Now, it wasn't a regular T5. It was an A5 that was beefed up by Astro Performance, had a totally different gear set, had a close ratio gear set. It did not have an overdrive. It had a 0.89 or 0.6, I forget what the overdrive, 0.89 or something like that, overdrive. So it was really a fifth gear, not an overdrive. Now, what's nice about the T5 is that it's tiny. It doesn't weigh a whole lot. On a naturally aspirated Coyote, a refreshed, upgraded unit can handle the power that's going to put down, and it shifts like butter. On top of that, if you're messing with a Fox body and it's already a manual, that means potentially you can reuse not only the transmission, but the drive shaft cross member, your shifter. You don't have to mess with the console. And if you're looking for that sleeper look, well, it's a T5 in there. You don't have to mess with a boot, none of that stuff. Under the hood, if you got a stock hood, then nobody knows you got a Coyote other than the fact that the car doesn't stall at a light and it smells decent. Which are the things I always had a problem with. So T5 is an option. To use it, though, you're going to need a QuickTime bell housing, an adapter. Now, those QuickTime bell housings, as you see here on the screen, they're a steel high-performance bell housing. It kind of acts like a scatter shield as well, but it allows you to adapt your T5s, TKOs, TKO 500, 600, even T56s to the modular forward bolt pattern on the engine. And then you can use that transmission behind it, whether it was there from the factory or not. The preference is always going to be that you're using the factory bell housing, which is aluminum, because these QuickTime bell housings, they can get noisy. And one of the other things we run into every once in a while is just a bunch of aftermarket parts thrown together. QuickTime bell housing, flywheel, flex plate, whatever is going on in there, aftermarket starter maybe. The engagement point of the starter could be a problem. And one of these photos here cycling, you'll see those shims. That's actually something we offer that nobody else offers, which are starter shims for the 3-bolt modular Ford starter. And I'm doing an in-depth video on that now for the YouTube channel, so you'll be able to get some information on that. They're cheap. They're like $15. Come in 60,000 and 80,000. You get both of them in the kit. But one of the other benefits to them is they are made of 50-52 aluminum, so they're strong, but it'll act like a deadener, like a sound deadener between your starter motor and this big steel bell that you're bolting onto the engine, so your starter gets a little bit quieter on startup. If you've ever been to the drag strip, I'm sure you've heard some wild and crazy starter sounds and so forth. In most cases, guys aren't really looking for that, and those starter shims can help you with that, but it is a byproduct of that big steel bell housing. Unfortunately, you put an aftermarket starter on there, even a factory one, it's going to get noisy. Now, the T5, I ran it again. It was an A5 version. It is a viable option. There are some modifications that you can do to the T5 to get an aluminum bell housing. As example, G-Force does sell an aluminum case for the T5. And then subsequently, they offer an aluminum bell that'll bolt up to a modular Ford engine. So you can get an all-aluminum T5 to bolt up to your Coyote if you go that route. If not, QuickTime bell housing gets it done nice and easy. And that transmission, I think, is the only transmission I can really pick up myself and probably manhandle. Everything else on this list, I don't think it's going to be an option. Talking hot. Hot. It's not the LED. It's hot. I can feel it. I can feel it. I don't have it. I left it in my truck. So moving on, transmission-wise, T45. T45s were found 96, 98 era. They were in the Cobras and the GTs. It does have an all-aluminum bell housing. The bell housing is integral to the transmission, even though it can be removed. There's no real adapter to work on these. So, that'll work. So that transmission, if you do have a 96, 98 Mustang GT or Cobra, and you're doing a Coyote swap, if it's in good health, you could use it. Now, the fear is that you're going to have more power in a stock Coyote engine than you would in a built 4.6 dual overhead cam naturally aspirated engine or 2-valve. So if it's boosted, then you're going to be looking for somebody to rebuild it and build it up, and there isn't a whole lot of support out there for a T45 when it comes to high-performance rebuilds. There aren't a whole lot of upgradable parts in there, so you're kind of stuck. So if you're planning on doing the swap on a budget, make sure that your plans are not to go crazy in the power department, because you're going to end up having to take that transmission back out. If you're looking to just slam in a truck motor, get the thing rolling up and down the street, I think it's going to be a good option. If it's a good health, it could work. But even if it is in decent health and you want to get it rebuilt, there aren't a ton of options out there to upgrade them. There's select few guys that have some cool parts for them and stuff like that, but it's not well known. It's not easily accessible. You're not going to get that at every place you go. So keep that in mind if you're planning on using the T45. Again, it is a slip yoke transmission. It's a factory Ford transmission, so it's not a bad option if you already have it. I wouldn't sit here and go, man, I need to go find a T45. I need to have a T45 for this build because that's my favorite transmission. I've never encountered anybody really dying to use it. It's usually just a simple case of I already have it. I'm going to go ahead and try to use it, save some money. Its successor was the 3650. The 3650 was found more in your 01 to 04 cars, or probably in 99 as well, mixed in there. And again, solid transmission. This one, there's a little bit more aftermarket support for. It does have an aluminum bell housing. It'll bolt right up to a Coyote. Shifter position is correct for a Fox, so you don't have to worry about changing your shifter, getting anything crazy. Maybe a shifter handle to try to make it fit perfectly. It is a slip yoke style transmission. There is no lockout for reverse, any of that skip shift stuff going on yet in these transmissions. Has an OSS, VSS. It's a little bit more upgraded for your new Edge guys. This is what you're going to have in your car to begin with. And if you want to continue to use it, it is an option. You don't have to change it out. You don't have to make any modifications to it. Really, if you're doing that 2-valve swap, it's an 01 GT or a Bullet or something like that, and you have this one behind your factory engine and it's in good health, you can reuse it. That means you can reuse your drive shaft, your cross member, your shifter. All those things will keep in play, and it works out really well if you're trying to do something on a budget. Again, if you're going to boost it, that's where you really have to stop and think, should I either rebuild it now while it's out, or should I change it out to something that can handle the power? One of those transmissions you may consider using, aftermarket-wise, is a TKO style Tremec. Now, TKOs are available in two flavors, 500 and 600, and within those you have different gear ratios and overdrives that you can pick from. Shifting-wise, on a Coyote, we'll touch on this real quick, it is a high RPM engine. Not all these transmissions are designed to really excel at high RPM shifting. The TKO, I've been told, has its issues at high RPM. There are modifications you can do to a TKO transmission to improve it. They've been done in my transmission, and I honestly prefer the way my T5 shifted over the modified TKO that I have. And what I do run into is it is a little notchy, lower RPM. At high RPM, there seems to be, it's just not as free-flowing into the gear as I would like it. Now that I'm doing autocross, it's not really that big of an issue, but on street driving, road course, even drag racing, it's going to be an issue because you're going to take it to red line every time on every shift.
Do they still make the Tremec 3550?
Yes.
Jim Gedney asked about that.
The 3550, I was trying to find out before we started tonight what it came in as far as a Mustang. I want to say it was in those... Nothing?
It
Okay.
was an upgrade. Oh, actually, maybe the Cobra R.
Maybe. I think it might have been that.
R.
I read an article, G-Force makes a monster 3550 that can handle 4-digit power numbers.
Really?
It is nasty. It was in one of the NMRA magazines. They did a full spread on it. If you're looking to do something on those lines, it was touted as one of the best, what do you call it? Not sequential. Synchronized transmissions that you can go to for big power. Because usually when you have big power, they want to give you a dog box. It's a no lift shift kind of situation. It's a Jasper or a CNR, road racing, NASCAR transmission, or a sequential. The 3550 has a street manners, but it can handle big power. I don't have a ton of information on it. I don't know anybody who owns one like that, so you may have to do your own research on that one in particular. But I know G-Force had a ton of stuff in that article, and it was maybe like a year and a half ago that I read about it. So it should still be available. I don't know with COVID, exactly what's happened. But some people have given up on everything, but TKO 500, 600 are an option for you. You will need a QuickTime bell housing to use it.
Robert Wheaton confirmed It came in the 95 Cobra R.
Okay.
3550.
I thought it came
That makes
in
sense.
one of the Mustangs. I was searching on Google, nothing was coming up. But Cobra R makes sense. It was the upgraded car, the hot rod. TKO 500, yes, QuickTime bell housing. It's a direct mounted shifter, multiple shifter mounting positions. So if you're working with something that's not a Mustang and you need to move that shifter forward, you can buy different shifters for it and install them on there and move the shifter up in the case, as you can see in some of the photos there. No shift interlock, slip yoke style. No shifter lockout. It is a slip yoke style drive shaft, so easy to modify and play with. And that one there, you see that billet top on it. That's actually a low profile lid for the TKO transmission. So if you're having issues with clearance to the floorboard of the vehicle, you can buy that. I want to say that's from Bowler, and they replace all that extra mounting points and so forth you're not using with a billet cover that makes it a little bit lower profile. So it's a little trick piece. It is sold as a aftermarket transmission from Tremec. I don't think the TKOs were ever in any factory application. The TKOs, you're going to spend probably about $2,100, $3,000 to get one, but it's an easy way to get a brand new transmission for your build if you're doing everything new. Your other option, brand new, is going to be T56. Now, T56 you've probably heard plenty of because T56s were available in Chevrolet, Camaros, Corvettes, Mustangs, as far as the Cobras in 0304. You could get them in Viper, so you'll hear a lot of things about Viper spec and so forth. There's a lot of factory application upgrades that can be done to them, which makes them a pretty trick transmission. And then you can also get them from those factory applications. Now, if you're lucky enough to have an 0304 Cobra T56 or Coyote swapping an 0304 Cobra, you can reuse your transmission. It's for a mod motor. It has an aluminum bell housing on it in a factory application, and you can bolt it right up to a Coyote, reuse your clutch fork and clutch and all that stuff. As long as it's 8-bolt flywheel, you're good to go. That means you can reuse the drive shaft. That means guys with a Fox body that are doing a T56 swap, maybe an older Fox, you can look to the 0304 Cobra for specs on drive shaft length, cross members as well. Cross members are something that pretty much across the board you can reuse a lot of your factory stuff, but if you do have to use something custom, we're lucky enough we have companies like Stifler's that have all sorts of different mounts and cross members that we can go to mount different style of transmissions and different year cars, and they kind of centered around Mustangs and now F100s as well. So you can see they give you just about everything. When it comes to an MT82, they got you covered. And they got you on a TKO, T56, C4, C6, you name it. All that stuff, as far as the more popular transmissions that are going to be used, they got cross members for you. T56 is available as a brand new aftermarket transmission. They come in a couple different flavors as far as gear ratio. 297 first, 266 first, which if you are a 6R80 guy, the 4R200 hub changes gear ratios and it's still a 6R80.
No.
Even though you choose a 266 T56 or 297, it's still a T56, which is kind of the...
But if you break a record in a 297 first...
You own the 297 first record. You don't own the T56 record.
Right.
Right?
Right.
No, that's wrong.
That's how it has to be, right?
Well, then everyone's rear gear changes too, right? Tire size has to be part of that record then. So, obviously not. T56s are a great option. They're a big, heavy transmission, so if weight is something you're concerned about in your build, if it's a race car or something like that, you may not want that extra weight. It comes from the extra gear and how big the gear heads are in the transmission itself, because it can handle quite a bit of power. If you're buying an aftermarket T56, a brand new one, the ones that like we offer from American Powertrain and Astro, directly through Tremec, you're still going to need a QuickTime bell housing adapter, as you can see in the picture here. That's the one that actually Ford Racing offers for the 3-valve guys, because that was what was offered in the FR500 Mustang Challenge cars. It's got a scatter shield QuickTime bell housing on it. It's got the Magnum tail shaft housing on it, so it's nice and long, so it'll work in the factory opening for the shifter. When it comes to T56, you're going to have a couple different tail shaft housing ends that you can select from, but really the one you see pictured here is what everybody's going to end up using. for the most part, and it has another mounting position ahead of it. There's a lot of aftermarket support for the T56 as far as shifters. You can even get sequential shifters for them now, which is pretty trick. And you can get offset shifter as well. So if you need to move it forward or really far back, anything for comfort level, depending on what you're building, you can select that as well. Driving, my impression of T56, I still think the 6060 and the T5 outperform it shifting wise, but the 56 it shifts well. There's no, I'll take it over a TKO's as an example in the shifting department. They are big and long. They do have a slip yoke. Big and long. And they do use a slip yoke style drive shaft, which is good, makes things affordable. And they do have a reverse lockout. Now, what's tricky there is if you're putting this in a vehicle and you never worked with a reverse lockout, is you basically have to wire or trick the reverse lockout to disengage. In race cars, they'll actually put it on a switch so that while you're racing on the track, you don't accidentally put it in reverse, because 6th gear and reverse are right on top of each other. If you go to the wrong gate, 5th, yeah. And then,
oh no, sorry, 6. You're right.
6, yeah, 6, and then so if you mix it up, you got a driver hopping in there, doesn't really know the car or something like that. You can see how that could be a bad day. What you'll simply do is wire it to your brake light switch, so that when you're on the brake and you're clutching it, then it'll go into reverse nice and easy. If you don't do that, and you're a guy like me, you're going, man, it's really hard to put in reverse. And then you realize that the shifter and lock isn't hooked up, and that's why. So that's one tricky thing about it. It's really not that big of a deal. Usually when you're buying them, you're going to have the connector and everything from the supplier, so you can get that adapted and put into your vehicle and be able to move forward with it. Oh yeah, let's take a look at it.
Renair says, "Hi Frank, it's Renair Ramos. Quick question: How does it work for connecting a Gen 3 manual control pack trans harness to an 0304 T56 harness?"
Well, I'm trying to think what you really have to integrate there, because
it's a mechanical. Isn't it a mechanical
exactly
speedo?
There in the control pack, Ford Racing has given you the extension harness for your O2 sensors and the starter trigger and all that stuff. The only thing that would be integrating back into the harness would be speed signal, if you need that.
And the reverse should be in the body.
Reverse is going to be direct to the lights.
Mm-hmm.
The reverse shifter interlock gate thingy, that's going to be independent. So I don't really think you have to intertwine too much there. In fact, you really shouldn't have an 0304 harness in the car to get it done. You really kind of pluck that stuff off, maybe get the connectors you need to repurpose it. But if you're trying to interlay those two together, that's probably going to be overkill, I would say. You don't need to do all that stuff. You really just use what's in the control pack and then apply the rest of the stuff as needed to the rest of the car. Reverse lights, reverse shifter interlock, and the OSS or VSS output if you're using that for your gauges or to run it to the computer so it sees a speed signal so it doesn't have any issues with stalling and so forth. But those are the only electronic, there's 3 electronic connectors on it, and none of them really have to go into the control pack. You don't really have to wire them in and get them in there and have to adapt the stuff. It should be pretty straightforward. If that doesn't clear up your question, just post up in the chat there. So T56, to me, what I've seen has been the most common go-to for an aftermarket transmission for Coyote swaps. The Ford guys look at it as the hot rod transmission because that's what was in the 0304 Cobras. More gears is always better is the general consensus. A 5-speed can do some damage, but if you want to have all the bells and whistles, why not have a second overdrive for highway driving?
It does need, in my opinion, some upgrades, because it's only 10 spline input shaft, so you're going to have to upgrade to the Viper spec.
Viper spec input shaft. That stuff, as far as upgrading it, when you're getting them from Tremec as an aftermarket transmission, you're getting a lot of the goodies that were upgrades to the factory transmissions. If you're working with a factory transmission, I know they're still out there. I know Astro, I think, has a few reman T56s from 0304 Cobras, but they're not upgraded. They're, like Alex said, they're 10 spline, that kind of. I mean, actually, I think they were 26 spline. Weren't they?
Stock? No.
Stock, they were 10 spline. Wow.
Jump stock.
So you have to then, if you're going to be doing high performance driving or supercharging and stuff like that, you're going to have to do some upgrades to it, and that costs more money. So getting a Reman T56 probably still costs you $3,000. Getting an aftermarket one's about $3,200, but you're getting all the upgrades. You got to spend $800 on a bell housing, but now you got to spend another $1,500, $2,000 to send that thing out and have it upgraded if those parts are available still. So again, COVID. And
Rupier has a good question. He said, what sequential transmission options are there for 15 plus? And what gear ratio do you prefer for road course with 373 gear? What do you have gears for your car in the back?
I run 373s.
And he's talking about road course, so he brings a good example as to how they work with your gear ratio.
I'm running a TKO 600 without the overdrive. That was the option on the 600. Without the overdrive, with 373s on a 275 40 18. When I was road racing AI, it was a 275 40 17. To me, it was geared perfect. The car was very predictable. Didn't have a whole lot of wheel speed at slow corners and at Sebring. One of the most important corners is the hairpin because it does lead to a pretty long straightaway from a slow speed. So you had to get out of there good. And if you had 410s, depending on your driving style, you may not want the ass end all over the place. And I was more, I guess you can consider me a smoother driver, not as aggressive, but, you know, the other guys in the group say, hey, you're driving like a, you know what, and maybe you do need to throw it around a little bit, get that wheel spin going, but I never really got to that point where I started changing rear gears. I always ran those 373s with the A5 and the TKO, and I was happy with it. I was topping out at like 140 miles an hour in fifth gear. So that was pretty good. I didn't really have to reach for another gear. I wasn't redlining at the end of the straightaways. I was able to go 140. Could probably go faster, honestly, if I was at somewhere like Daytona and so forth. But 373s to me kind of hit in the middle. It really is going to depend on what you're doing with the car and what tracks you're running at. Because if you are road racing, if you're doing DE and you're going to run the same track consistently because it's close to you, might as well set it up for that track. And if you go somewhere else, do you really want to change rear gears to potentially pick up a tenth or two, or maybe half a second around there if you're just going to go to that track once a year? Probably not. So we always ran the same rear gears no matter where we were going. We weren't changing gears Saturday night for the finals on Sunday or anything like that. There's not millions of dollars on the line. As far as a sequential transmission option, the DCT isn't really an option yet from the GT500. That eventually is going to be your best option. Tremec has said they're going to come out with universal aftermarket supported DCT options for guys. They've also reported that they're going to come out with a new 5-speed transmission to replace the TKO. And what's interesting about that one is it shifts a lot more like a T5, and it's smaller like a T5 as well. The T5 is not being discontinued by Tremec, as I've been told. They're going to continue to make it, which is good because more parts are available for rebuilds and so forth. And usually a lot of aftermarket companies kind of take their cue off of what Tremec is selling and using. So I think they said they sold something like 2,000 T5s last year, which is surprising. So yeah, they still get used. And I think for a kit car, a factory 5 car or something like that, even a Fox body, an NA Fox body, a built T5, makes a lot of sense. I mean, and it's not used a whole lot. Everyone kind of writes it off. Don't write it off completely. Look into it because you may have what you need already. It just needs to be warmed over. And that rebuild may be cheaper than going out and getting a T56 and having to undo everything you've already done. You'll still be able to use that drive shaft and shifter. Like I said, cross member, you don't have to buy those things. So if you're doing a budget build, it may make a lot more sense to upgrade that T5. So keep that in mind. Let's see, F-150, S550, one of our regulars.
I love the question too. It's great.
What are your opinions on replacing a spun bearing with engine engine Coyote and vehicle for like a month? Want to stir the pot? What?
He
What am
wants
I
to
missing
replace-
here?
He wants to replace a spun rod bearing with the engine in the vehicle still. He basically flooded his engine, it diluted the oil, and he spun a bearing. So now he wants to replace it in the car
Well,
for about a month until he gets a new motor.
I'm no engine expert, but I mean, if you got the right parts, what's wrong? I mean, as long as it's not gouged and you
Right.
don't have to, it's going to be hard to really gauge if you need to get an oversized bearing, which is what would happen. And in those cases, if a machine shop is going to get it, they're going to then polish the crank down to the size it needs to be to run that oversized bearing so it doesn't cause an issue during installation. So how are you going to determine that? If you just throw in another set of stock bearings, the only risk you're running is that the damage on the crank isn't going to work properly with the tolerances on that bearing. So you may end up not doing anything, just wasting a bunch of time and money and effort. But that's totally up to you, man. I mean, we've replaced crankshafts without taking engines out, but
Coffee Man,
yeah, Coffee Man was a perfect example of that. Pro Charger ripped the balancer off of it with the snout of the crank in it. It was an Illuminator engine.
So a Pro Charger ripped the...
Yeah, I think it was in that case there, I will tell you that
He had an F-Series. He had a bad...
he had an F1X,
Yeah.
and he kept cranking on the mechanical tensioner on the blower. And naturally, you start pulling both points into each other, and it just ripped the snout off. Whether that's exactly why it happened or not, forensically we couldn't tell, but it's a good one, huh?
Good word.
Forensically. And but in his case, he was running an Illuminator motor. He was able to get the scan off of the laser etch on the crankshaft, report it to Ford Racing. Ford Racing sent him the exact same crankshaft.
Oh, wow.
He put it in, and subsequently kept running it, and then started lifting the heads off of it, and he sold that motor like that.
All right.
But it still ran. It was running like 8s like that with blowing, coolant out of the bottle. On spray, it was an Illuminator motor with like 20 something pounds of boost from an F1A or an X with 150 shot on top of it. And that was before trans brakes, so we had line locks on the front and the rear wheels to launch it.
Yes.
So he would go up to the line, he'd engage the line lock, it would hold all four, and he'd just basically get up on the converter and launch it down the track. So it was in the primitive days of the 6R80 stuff. So that's up to you, man. If you feel like it's only for a month and it's not damaged that bad, I mean, all those things kind of factor in. You're going to have to make that call sight on scene. So good luck. Hopefully it doesn't become 1,000 pieces. It just maybe one or two.
I think he's going to buy another motor. It's just,
That makes sense. I mean, if you're looking for a core engine to build, we do have a few used Boss 302 engines and GT350 Voodoo engines. The Boss engines are the ones I would think you'd probably want to go for because of the whole cross plane, flat plane deal and the firing order and all that stuff. Those Boss engines, they're pretty cherry for used engines here, and you get the CNC ported heads, you get the Boss cams, valve springs, you get the bottom end, which was balanced and upgraded, similar to the Gen 2 stuff. So if that's something that you may need for a rebuild, so you don't have to take your car apart or your truck apart just yet, that might be something to spend some money and get, so you can build it outside of what you're doing, so you can minimize your downtime. Depends on your budget and so forth. And if you need hard parts, you need a crank, you need rods, pistons, those engines may have good stuff in them that you can reuse.
So if money was no object, Frank Perdomo wanted to buy a manual, where do you get it? Money is no object.
Money is no object.
Your car, naturally aspirated road race.
My car, naturally aspirated. What transmission I would go with? I would want to see what they do with that new 5-speed, but I would probably go back to an A5. I mean, I'm going to go back to what I know worked. It worked great for me. It shifted great, and I'll shave a few pounds off the car. There isn't a whole lot else that's on that list that I got to have.
Right.
Money is no object. Maybe I'll get a racing sequential dog box kind of thing, but you know, again, let's stay in the realm of reality per se. So I would probably stick with an A5. Yeah, I'd probably do an A5. There's really no reason.
What's the most power you've seen a guy using a T5 variant make and run? Because I remember Bob Hanlon was building them back in the day.
Yeah, they're face plating them and doing all that crazy stuff.
Yeah,
and
but I don't remember guys running eights with them.
I mean, they're probably running quick and putting the wheels up in the air and so forth, but they weren't like big power cars.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. It could be someone.
I don't remember them being like in big Pro Charge nasties, you know, crazy outlaw cars. Those guys were using something else.
Okay.
All right, so we covered the T56. Let's talk a little bit about the 6060. Now, the 6060 you're going to find in GT500s. 6060 is a strong transmission. That's why you found it behind a supercharged 5.4 liter V8. It is available in a couple different flavors. If you're using an OEM version of it, you'll see there in that picture, it's got a remote shifter, and it uses a CV-style drive shaft. If you get the aftermarket version, which they call the Magnum, it has a tail shaft housing on and a slip yoke. So you can get it in an aftermarket form for what you're doing, let's say for an older vehicle, to make it easier to install. If you're using one right out of a GT500, CV-style drive shaft, remote-mounted shifter. Shifters are available to kind of modify it, very similar to the MT82s. But as you can see there, it hangs out pretty far back. And I've been in an F100 truck that has a 6060 in it. And while you're driving, you get your hands up here on the steering wheel, the shifter is all the way back here next to your hip. That doesn't really work too great, especially if you're hauling ass in a supercharged F100. So the battle is going to be building a remote shifter there to get that to work. That could be an issue, and that's going to be an issue for anybody putting it into a Fox body Mustang, let's say a Falcon, an early Mustang, those kind of things. So if you're looking at a 6060, I would probably pay really close attention to the tail shaft housing and make sure that it's a direct mount shifter. That way it is the aftermarket version. You have options on the shifter. Additionally, it does have a reverse lockout, so you'll have to play with that stuff, OSS, VSS, and the bell housing. If you're going to get, I think, the aftermarket version or the GT500 version, you're going to get an aluminum bell housing that you can play with there. You could use those OEM components that made it up to the Coyote, so that's a plus because you don't get the loud bell housing and it's more of a direct fit. I will say, when we're talking about these transmissions, 05 and up Mustang, all are hydraulic slave versus everything 04 and older is clutch fork cable. So if you're getting a 6060 transmission and you're going to put it into a Fox body, you better figure out how you're going to adapt a clutch fork and cable or put a hydraulic conversion kit on there to then operate the factory slave cylinder. So clutches and all that stuff's a whole nother conversation. We'll kind of stay out of that right now. But the 6060 was interesting because if you did get it from a 1314 GT500 with the track pack, they had an integral oil pump. So if you need to have a transmission cooler, most of us don't. I never run one before. You can put aftermarket ones on there. But if you do find one of those, it's kind of like a holy grail situation. You could use it for transmission cooling for the street. There's no way you need it. Most of the cars we're adapting all this stuff in are lighter than 1314 GT500s, and we're not road racing them in most cases. So don't really need all that crazy cooling. Don't need to spend a bunch of money on it if you don't need to. 3160, latest and greatest from Tremec. Whoa.
Whoa, what turned on?
My computer just turned on. Wow.
Yeah, look at that.
Whoa.
That sounded industrial.
I've never heard that computer do that. It's a new computer. It fired the hell up.
Ooh, cool down, baby.
That sounded like a black magic. The 3160 transmission, 6-speed, CV-style drive shaft, remote-mounted shifter, transmission cooling pump usually is in there because they were found only in the GT350s. No one's come up with a tail shaft adaptation to put a direct mounted shifter in it. I know Tony at Astro had shown me some plans that he was looking at doing that stuff, but I don't think it ever really came to fruition. They are available as cores, so you can find used ones out there that are rebuilt. They will bolt right up to a Coyote engine as well. I don't know if it's the transmission itself or the clutch orientation on a GT350, but I haven't run into one with boost that didn't have shifting issues.
Only one, and it was, I think, pure luck that I drove. But, I can't say.
I don't think it's the transmission. I think it's more on the clutch, but it is a concern. So if you're buying a Voodoo pullout from a car and it has a 3160 behind it, the challenges you're going to face are shifter. If it has the transmission cooler built into it, plumbing that or bypassing it. Fitment, it is a little bit smaller, I believe, than the 6060s. So I think there's a better chance of it fitting more cars. And then drive shaft because of CV style. Electronics, I don't think there's anything special on there that you really got to worry about. I mean, maybe shift interlock. It's going to have an OSS, VSS. Wiring might be a little bit particular to it, but you should be able to use it. So that kind of covers a majority of the transmissions that are going to be an option for guys using a Coyote, as far as the transmissions that are well known in the Ford world, out of factory Ford cars and what we know as the presently available aftermarket as well. All these transmissions will also work on 4.6 and 5.4 liter engines. The modular engine family is exactly that. It's modular. You can take pieces from here and there and they kind of bolt together. That's why motor mounts work in 4.6 and Coyote and vice versa. So if you have a vehicle that is a 5-speed, for example, 05 to 09 Mustang GT, you can reuse that transmission. There's nothing wrong with reusing that transmission if you're going to do a Coyote swap. That way you can reuse your drive shaft, your shifter, your hydraulic slave, all that stuff. But if it's going to be a big power Coyote swap, then you might be limited on what you can do to that transmission and find yourself having to get a T56 or a 6060 and adapting it to your car. So things to consider as you're planning out your build. If you already got a modular Ford engine, you might have something you can reuse and save some money. So, oh yeah, let's take a look at them, man. What's up? Thanks for it's Jason Friedberg. Thanks for taking the time each week to do this live stream. Love the info and the stories. You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in, supporting the channel. We appreciate that stuff. It helps us obviously grow the channel. As you can see, this BA of a mic system. Hopefully we'll be upgrading some more things and get some more what do you call it, hats and shirts and stuff. Content.
Hats.
Yeah. Hats. Everybody wants hats. Made the hats popular. Yeah. And let's see here, Doug. I don't want to butcher your name, but Fidelki. Yeah. I think it's right. Any idea if the hydraulic kits like the one from Modern Driveline will still fit on the firewall with a Coyote, or will there be clearance issues? It depends on what engine or car you're running. It looks like you got a Fox body in your avatar there. So the hydraulic kits, I've honestly never installed one or worked with one. If they are specific to a Fox, my expectation would be that you don't have to mess with anything, but aftermarket parts being what they are and Fox body Mustangs being what they are, I would say that the range of changes you may have to make would be from don't have to do anything or having to do an entire firewall. So Modern Driveline, I'm not too familiar with that kit. I can look into it, or if you email me what the kit contents are, I can look into it or even call them for you and see what they say. But I imagine what they're going to be doing there is mounting, you got to mount a clutch master cylinder somewhere. So that's going to have to mount to the firewall, be fixed mounted somewhere. And then it's going to have to connect also to the, what do you call it, the clutch pedal and all its assemblies. So I imagine you're going to be doing some modification there, even if it's as simple as drilling the firewall, mounting a plate. Those firewalls aren't that thick, so I hope they have backing plates to it too, so make sure it's reinforced. And other than that, all the other magic's happening down at the bell housing. I'm sorry I don't have a ton of information on that, kind of speculating there a little bit, but again, email me, info@pbhperformance.com, and show me what you're talking about, and I can get some input or get some questions answered for you that way.
He says he has a 1993 Cobra, and we're pronouncing his name properly.
Fidelki?
Fidel Castro, Fidelki.
That's bad Cuban.
I know, just saying,
Fidelki.
Something you recognize.
I'm saying it right, man. I got it right. No idea.
So I saw Minion. If any of you guys follow the Minion,
Yeah.
he just put in like a race version of that
saw
pedal
that too.
system. I don't know how affordable it is, but if somebody wants to look into that,
Well,
it looks pretty badass.
What I saw that he did, and I've seen that kit before, it's a kit that some race shop has come up with, which is pretty trick, that mounts the brake master cylinder and the clutch master cylinder on the inside part of the firewall. So if you're looking for a really clean look to your firewall, I think they have a kit that's just for the brake master cylinder and allows you to kind of reverse it, just as a billet plate on the outside. But then now they have a race version that has all the mounts for the master cylinders, for the clutch master, and then front and rear brakes as well, which is pretty trick because when you get into those aftermarket components, you usually have to have a roll cage to mount any of that stuff because the firewall is typically not going to be strong enough to do it. And then lining all that stuff up with your pedals is going to be a challenge as well. Stuff that gets into the fabrication side of things, less bolt in and go side of things. So that is a pretty trick system. I forget the name of the shop that did it.
I should know, but that's kind of what prevented me from doing the Fairmont. I went,
yeah, you got to cut and figure things out, which isn't, depending on your skill level, may not be that big of a deal, but it is more work, and you got to make things fit. And if you're using a stock dashboard, it may not be an option. If you're using stock pedals, it may not be an option. But if you look up Yandro Ulloa, the Turbo Minion Mustang, he has pictures of it on his car. And it may be something you like or can take advantage of and use. It may be the answer to something you're trying to get figured out for your own car. So check that out.
Fabrication and Performance.
That's it.
Fraser's Fabrication and Performance, billet pedal conversion. It's
yeah.
badass.
Here, let me see. I'm going to try to put it up
Actually, okay.
on the camera here. Oh, I can't really see, but here, let me go to OBS and see. There we go. Let's see here. I'm going to try to put this up on the, so you guys can see that I think there's some Willwood master cylinder components in there, some stuff being adapted. It does not look like you have the factory pedal box at all. Looks like all that stuff is new.
It's like standalone, its own thing.
I see a clutch master cylinder. I see a brake master cylinder in there on their respective pedals. So
it's like Inception. You're seeing yourself within yourself down there. It's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Look at that.
Imagine if I get a Tinder notification right now.
Do you think it?
No, it's not going to happen.
Think it's because of me?
No. But yeah, if you look at his stuff, oh my God, you should have scrolled. Look at.
Oh yeah, they got some cool stuff in there. Oh, hold on. Oh. Yeah, it's got some trick stuff to it. I mean, I don't know exactly what comes in that kit, but here's like another little shot of, looks like a support piece that goes to where the master cylinder would mount potentially, and the gas pedal there. Let's see if we can find something else. Yeah, I've eyeballed this stuff before. See if I have the firewall side here. The firewall side is pretty neat because you usually don't see that part of the firewall that clean.
Super clean.
So there's nothing there. And with a Coyote engine being as wide as it is, we usually have to run manual brakes or the manual brakes or the Hydro Boost. This is another option to clean up the engine bay. What I also see is he has a clear view filtration oil filter housing, same as mine. Those things are pretty trick too. I talked about that last week. So yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, hydraulic conversions are available for Fox bodies in most of the older vehicles, and you can use a clutch cable if you'd like. I know on my 67 Falcon, we did a T5 conversion to it, and we actually converted the Falcon to cable style engagement for the clutch fork, which there is a kit for. There's parts out there for just about anything you want to do, or someone who's done it, or a YouTube channel that can show you some stuff too. So what else is going on in here? We got anything else in the chat here?
I think
hot topics.
F-150 SY50 is getting help on replacing the crank bearings. A lot of guys pretty much.
I would look up a guy who knows how to do Babbitt bearings.
He ended up saying that there was oil material, shavings everywhere. I guess he has a YouTube channel, so he's just kind of getting advice from all the guys and stuff like that. And then basically just people just following up on your your transmission. Some guy asked about DCT. He said, "Sorry if this is a dumb question." Actually, no, hold on. He's a little further up. He said, "Frank, would the 2020 DCT be two separate control systems, i.e., be able to run it with the older Gen 1 control pack, or is it integrated into one like the 6R80 control pack?"
That's a question I would love to see answered completely, but my anticipation is going to be that the DCT controller is going to be something pretty universal for it to be available for a lot of different applications, because if I'm Tremec and I'm releasing that DCT as an option, I'd love to see it behind a Windsor, behind an LS motor, behind a Coyote, some other application and so forth, and that would open up the field as far as who I can sell it to. Now, how does it function? It's not a sequential transmission with a gear lever. It's electronically controlled, so that means those controls need certain inputs to then develop its own logic as far as when it's shifting and how and what kind of driving you're doing. So if it needs all those inputs, some of those older engines don't have them to provide. And if you can generate them, okay, you can put a throttle position sensor on a carburetor, but are you really going to be doing that for a DCT? Probably not. So my anticipation is they're probably going to have some sort of limitation on controls. It's either going to be a control package for Coyote engines. Who knows if it's going to be all Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3. I think if there is something available for Gen 2, then potentially it could work with Gen 1. It may need some work as far as getting things figured out. I can't see them coming in market and saying, here, it's going to work on everything. Yeah, put it in your jet ski and your airboat or whatever. You know, it's going to be limited to certain applications. And luckily, since there is one behind a GT500 engine that is a Coyote, then most likely we're going to have Coyote options before other manufacturers have options. And the C8 stuff, I don't know how that's going to work out, but there is then some sort of tie-in to how those engines run and their signals. So maybe our version of the GT500 DCT ends up behind LS engines, that kind of stuff. So I think LS, LT engines, and Coyotes are probably the first ones that Tremec comes out with. And my anticipation is there's probably going to be some sort of control package that works specifically with Coyote engines, and then there'll be one for GM or Dodge or whatever ends up happening. So I don't think it's going to be completely universal where you can just kind of, weld it to another engine and go, I just don't see how they're going to do it, honestly. I don't think those older engines can provide enough information off the bat.
I want you to drive one yet, because
I want to drive one too.
Because I don't think it's that awesome. I don't think it's that awesome to swap it into something that is a older vehicle that you're gonna want to shift it.
Again, depends on what you're doing, right? Like me, I'm in a weird place where I don't drive my car on the street. It's not that it sucks or I don't want to. It's just that it's not really safe for me to drive my car on the street because it's got a full roll cage in it. And if anybody hits me at 20 or 30 miles an hour and I'm not wearing a helmet, there's a lot of bars in there that I can hit and I'm done. So subsequently, in the autocross that I run in at PBIR, they have reassessed their rules. And one of the rules is if you trailer your car to the track, to the autocross, or change your tires at the autocross, you're automatically bumped into the unlimited class. You're not considered a street car. And even though my car's street legal, with some stretch of the rules, just because I trailer it to the track, not because I run slicks or anything crazy or big power, just because I trailer it to the track, I'm in the unlimited class. And now the guys in the unlimited class can run slicks, and I'm on a 200 tread wear tire. Well, yeah, but slicks don't always work well in autocross because you don't put heat into them. Right. So now the question is should I find a gas station or a house nearby, trailer it out that far, and then putt into the track, and not have my Expedition full of all my gear and stuff for the night, just to skirt by the rules? But, what, I'll figure it out. I don't know. All right, let's see here. F-150, S550. Where you at? Frank, at what point should a 6R80 be built? I'm going to need it at some point, probably sooner than later, maybe ballpark price. Well, our rebuilds that include frictions and steels, billet intermediate shaft, all the seals, new valve body is usually put in there, and then full inspection of everything, and then a competition assembly or performance assembly. That's going to run you $3,200 if you provide a transmission for us to rebuild. Wow, that thing is loud.
It's like a race car fan.
Whoa.
It's literally a black magic.
I've never pushed it that hard.
That's so cool.
So $3,200, or $3,299, I believe, if you supply a transmission for us to rebuild. When do you need to rebuild it? I think there's a lot of factors that go into answering that question. Typically, power level wise, I'd say ballpark, once you get north of 550, 600 horsepower, you're in the zone where you could be stretching the components. And if they're in good health, if they're not in good health, you're probably going to wax it or at least slip the clutches there or hurt them. If you're driving it really hard and you got a lot of hard shifts and wheel hop, you're going to break stuff. Hard parts. The intermediate shaft, the forward planetary are going to be your first stops as far as breaking stuff. So if that truck has a lot of issue with wheel hop on launches, when you go to rebuild it, that entry-level rebuild may not be exactly what you want to stop at. You may want to go further and get into that forward planetary as well, and that depends on power level. If you're going to be playing at 800 horsepower, just like you do with an engine, if you want to run it at 800 horsepower, you got to build it like it's going to have 1100 horsepower. The transmission, the rear end, all that stuff's the same. So if you're going to use that power level, don't think 800 horsepower because, oh, I got 790 horsepower and this thing's good to 800, I'll be good. You got to build it as if you're going to have more power than that so it'll sustain it and continue to run and not give you failures and leave you at the track and spending money on top of money on top of money. So I'd say north of 550 to 600, depending on what you're doing. And then you also have to look at what kind of power you're going to make now and what potentially you're going to make in the future if everything goes well. So if we're going to rebuild it now at $3,200 because you're only going to have 650 horsepower, but you're a pulley change away and an octane change away from making 800, and now all of a sudden I'm ripping it at the track and running it off a two-step and a trans brake, then I'm going to wish you would have put that forward planetary in there while you had the chance so that you don't break it and then have to send it to us and have to buy parts over again and do an upgrade. So keep those things in mind. Blue 99, is there a sequential transmission for Coyotes? If so, which ones are stout? We were part of a SEMA build that Hoonigan was part of and Detroit Speed was part of, and they use a Sedev. Sedev is what they typically use in a lot of the Ken Block Hoonigan, Gymkhana cars, and they can build them at a lot of different power levels. It's like a rally transmission. That car in particular claimed to have upwards of 550 to 600 horsepower naturally aspirated with a 5.2 XS, and they had a standalone on it. If you look at some of the videos we've shared on our social media, or if you go to the Hoonigan Daily Transmission, there is a SEMA Mustang that they covered. That is the car, and of course they just burn the tires down for 20 minutes. They're not really showing you go through the gears and shifting and so forth. The guy who built it, his name is Mark McDonald. The guy who owns it is Justin Serpernit. I might be butchering his name. But on their social media, they have videos of them driving it and actually going through the gears. And it's crispy and it's wonderful. But those things are big money. They are north of $10,000. So depending on your budget, that may not be an option. Now, S1 Sequential does have a sequential shifter that you can put on a synchronized transmission. So if you have a T56 or a 6060 or something along those lines, it's just a shifter. You still have to clutch it, but it's just pulling back and pushing forward as far as the gates. So my thought is that is going to be a quicker shift, a lot more affordable. The shifter itself, I want to say, comes in around $2,000 or $2,500. It's as far as a gadget, it's pretty cool. I've never seen one on a car. I've just seen their videos, but it will help you shift quicker because you're not having to find a gate. You're just pulling back and it's always going to go into gear as long as the clutch is in there, or if it's set up for no lift shifts or something like that, it'll be a little bit quicker for you, but it's not a sequential box. You're still using traditional T56 6060 stuff. So Matt Linkle.
I don't know.
Matthew Linklater, you answered a few questions of mine via email about swapping an 06 Explorer. Appreciate the advice. Some channel support before I buy parts. Hey, you're welcome, man. I remember the email. You were talking about doing a Coyote swap in an 06 Explorer. I think I mentioned try to look at what guys are doing in '05 and up F-150s to see correlations and getting gauges and stuff like that to work. Fitment, obviously, there was a 4.6 liter engine available in those year cars or the sport tracks, so it should fit. And I think there's a couple guys have done Coyote swaps on the Adrenaline sport tracks, so you can kind of tee off of what they did, maybe if you can find them, and how they got everything to work. I think it's a little bit of an uphill battle because there's just not a whole lot of guys like you out there doing them, and that's going to be potentially a problem as far as getting parts. If there is something that needs to happen, then you're kind of on an island making your own stuff, and depending on your installation level or skill level, that could really hold up a build and install it. So good luck with it. Obviously, if there's anything we can do or something that we offer that can help you do it, great, and we'd love to be part of it. It's just there's not a whole lot of chassis specific Coyote swap tech for that car, and maybe your build would be the one that changes that. Who knows? But thank you for the support.
Wildhorse Garage has a good question. He said, why do some MT82s below stock and some live happy lives at 600 horse? I think driver mod is the problem usually. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree that driver setup, how it's driven, probably has a big part to do with it, because I haven't seen any components or failed components that specifically always fail, like consistently at this power level or this use, so forth. Your car was a good example of that. Mm-hmm. Alex had a Gen 1, 11 to 14 car supercharged with an MT82 in it, and it lasted seemingly forever.
115,000 miles.
115,000 miles. We have a customer named Chad that has a RTR 11 to 14 car supercharged. He's got 120 something thousand miles on it, and he drives it every day, highway. He doesn't drag race it, but when this guy gets on the highway, he beats the hell out of it like a normal Mustang owner would do. He gets some open road and he goes. He's a little bit more gentle with it, but he's got 120 something thousand miles on it. With I think he told me it was like 80,000 miles of that have been supercharged. And we did a lot of maintenance on that car. He meticulously takes care of it, does all the services. It's never failed him. And I want to say, I'm pretty sure he's on the stock clutch too.
Stock clutch, yeah.
So, yeah, there's some of them last, some don't. If you put in a pissed off teenager and a supercharged MT82, most likely you're going to have MT82 dust. And if he doesn't really understand the abuse and how it applies to that transmission, you're probably going to hurt it. If you're looking for a transmission that is stronger than you are smart, it's probably not going to be the best option. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, so the other thing is...
I know the clutch fork was an issue in some of them, but...
And also, I don't want to get too close to the mic because I want to be behind the scenes. 11 and 12s had better gear. That looks dark as hell.
You want to play ball? Let's play ball,
no,
baby.
No, I'm good now. Because I'll be awake all night. 11 and 12 had better, I guess, materials in the gears, whereas 13, 14 didn't. And the main thing that broke on them was the gear. Third gear.
Gotcha.
So if you have an 11 and 12, even though it whines and makes all that freaking noise,
it'll hold together.
It'll hold together more so than a 13, 14 transmission. Yeah. Or 15 and up. It seems to be 11 and 12 are the ones you want.
And guys like Astro Performance or Ben Calamer are good guys to reach out to and ask those questions as well and see what their take is on it, because they're seeing it from the point of view where you really want to get an opinion from, where they're seeing multiple failures. They're engaged in what's breaking and how to fix it. And I know Ben has that upgraded G-Force gear set, which obviously sounds like it's going to take care of a lot of the weak points and then do some upgrades as far as gearing goes as well. So it's a nice thing to have if you're going to definitely keep that MT82. I think for the most part, the popular opinion is, especially in a swap, you're probably not going to get to that point with an MT82.
Correct.
It just doesn't fit well in a lot of the swaps that we're doing, and subsequently you're not going to get to the point where you got to rebuild it, because you're probably never going to put the thing in. If you do put it in, you go, oh, I want to switch to something else and upgrade it then to a different transmission case. So
yeah. T56 seems to be the one that people go to, or the T5, like you said. It's like one or the other. Feast or famine, that's it.
56, 500, and 6060. 500 TKO, 56, and the 6060 are the most popular transmissions I've seen everybody running in Coyote swaps. the transmissions that are outside of that, the T5s, the 45s, the 3650s, 3550 not really, but the factory style transmissions are usually going to be stuff that you have already or got for a song and you're just going to make it work. They're usually more on the budget side of things. If you get serious with the build, you're probably going to be upgrading it quite a bit.
I just dropped this you know what on the chat.
Blue 99. Thank you, man. That's thank you so much. Got some Cuban coffee back there. LOL. Just channel support. I think we do.
What?
Bustelo.
Oh, you got Bustelo now?
I got Bustelo down here.
You know, I got a teapot thingy to make it at home. I'm not good at it, yo.
Well, I just gotta.
You got the brick?
It's on the other side of my bobblehead. Yeah, I have Bustelo in here.
Is it the brick or you got the little?
Well, I got the bag of it,
okay.
and we have Cuban coffee. I got a Cuban coffee maker. I make Cuban coffee every once in a while, but Alex had got us this Mr. Coffee because we were always running out to Dunkin' Donuts, and he was worried about our health with this whole COVID-19 thing.
Sure, that's why I got it.
That's why I bought it, so we don't have to go do that. But we do have a Cuban coffee maker. I make Cuban coffee every once in a while.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna learn how to do it.
But thank you so much.
I'm bad with the espumita. I can't get the espumita down.
Yeah, to get the foam, the key is with Cuban coffee is you got to get the right amount of sugar in la taza ahead of time, and when you brew the coffee in the espresso, because it's not just Cuban, it's kind of Italian, European, but the espresso maker, the first part of the brew that comes out is important. Because that hot water and steam has traveled through the coffee grinds, it had the hardest path. It's like making wine. It has to strain to give you its best. And what happens there is you get a lot of the oil that comes out of the grind right off the hit. So that's the darkest coffee is right off the hit because it's spent the most time percolating. And then you put that in with the sugar. And you whip that son of a bitch like it owes you money till you get like a yellow molasses in the bottom of the cup. But you don't put too much coffee in it because then it gets watered down. It has to be thick.
That's my problem.
So it's literally enough to wet the sugar
and
almost kind of cave it in a little bit.
Okay.
And then you work from there. And if you need a little bit more, put a little bit more in. But the first stuff is the key.
Already at that
well,
point,
once you start percolating on those Cuban coffee makers, you can pretty much turn down the heat. Because it's going to go, right? So, and you only have enough water in there to fill up the top. That's why you only fill it to that vent. Mm-hmm. So it's never going to go over. So you can leave it on, but it looks like a grenade's going off. So do that, whip it really good, like the song, and then you let it finish percolating, and then you fill it in nice and hot. And as it does that, you stir it a little bit, and it should give you that foam top without buying an espresso machine that does it, manufactures it.
They always give you that whole stuff.
But you can do this with your wrist.
Exactly. John W. paying me some money there.
John W. Jr., thank you, man. Another informative show as usual, just a bit to help out. Thank you so much. It's humbling to see that on there, John. I really appreciate that.
Eric Coppola says, have you ever seen anyone Coyote Swap a Lincoln LS?
No, I've seen a mod motor put into one. Not that the 3.9 wasn't a mod motor, but it wasn't the ones that we liked. But I saw, man, the first time I went to PRI, it was in Orlando. I want to say it was a Spec Clutch booth. They had it. In that car, it was a Lincoln LS with a centrifugal on a dual overhead cam 4.6. It was swapped. They had to cut the core support and do a custom radiator. I think the radiator straddled the intake tube. It did not fit well at all from what I can gather, but it could have been because of all the piping and the intercooler for the centrifugal. But it was on the same chassis. The guy who developed the Lincoln LS was a Mustang fanatic growing up. I remember reading the story about the kid, and he designed that chassis with the Mustang in mind. But by the time it got to production, they had pushed the size of it and all that stuff, and they couldn't fit a GT, a 4.6 engine in it, and they ended up with this 3.9 liter V8. And when they put it together, the Lincoln LS had 50-50 balance. It was a great driving car. It just didn't have the balls. And when they decided to do a test by shorting it, making the Thunderbird as a special edition vehicle, it didn't get the response they were looking for because that was supposed to be the new Mustang.
Yep.
And it failed. So obviously the Thunderbirds are cool cars. I don't want to harp on anybody on that one, but it wasn't a great setup. Dustin's Customs. Can you use a 4R70W with a new Edge Coyote Swap? Absolutely. In fact, if you have a 4R70W car, it's a new Edge, we have the shifter lever and the shift stop bracket to allow you to use the stock 4R70W shifter and cable on a 6R80. So that way you don't have to modify the center console. If you're using a 4R70W with a Coyote Swap, you're going to need a standalone controller for the 4R70W, and the control pack you're going to use has to be for a manual transmission.
There you go.
Something's going on there. Got
funky. Oh, it's probably telling you that the chat is paused or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
gotcha. I'm seeing a little error message here.
Yeah,
that's all.
because basically your chat will stop moving, but mine, that's why.
Gotcha. So, yes, you can do it. It's not a problem to do it. You will have to tune it independently from the Coyote engine. So you're going to have essentially two computers running the powertrain. One's going to be a small US shift quick 4 running the transmission with some inputs from the Coyote and the control pack. And then you're going to have your control pack computer running the engine. That's why you're getting a manual transmission control pack, because it doesn't have anything to do with the automatic. It's just getting, residual information to make things happen in the controller itself. You can reuse a stock drive shaft, cross member, shifter cable, as long as you're using our brackets, and then just get a warmed over 4R70W, because you are going to be making quite a bit more power than they were designed to handle. Lentech Automatics is a great source for that stuff. He's got pans, he's got the red clay clutches, all the upgradable shafts and so forth. He's up in Canada. We used him for years when we were working on those, and we did some crazy shit with 4R70Ws. Sergio's car is a good example of that. He's kind of taken over on the tuning and so forth. We still rebuild his transmissions every once in a while, but he's got himself basically a low 8-second, 4-digit, turbocharged 331, I believe, Fox body, Celine Fox body, that runs a 4R70W transmission behind it, and that thing rocks. Look him up. It's called Ego Breaker. You probably find him on a lot of the TRC channel. He does a lot of street racing with it there in Mexico.
Way down there.
All the way, like in Antarctica. So yeah, definitely doable. Thank you for the support. And if you have any questions on that any further, you can always email us, info@pbhperformance.com. I think I'm going to have to start winding this thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I think we kind of hit the limit, and doing very well. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us tonight. I hope the information that we provided helps you either understand what your options are there, or maybe, provokes more thought into other options out there, or helps you with your build or something you're doing for a customer or so forth. Our goal is to just inform you guys as much as possible. Obviously, if one of our products fits what you're doing, please consider PBH Performance. If you're already using PBH Performance for your Coyote Swap needs, thank you for your patronage. We are here every Wednesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern. PBH Live next week. We'll have to see what we're going to be talking about. Maybe we'll do something similar, but with automatic transmissions. Might be a good conversation to have. I know Ryan Merrill sent me a potential thought. He, among like 4 or 5 other people, want me to do a video on my car and what my car has in it, which I know you already done a video on my car, but maybe something more in depth.
You know way more about the car.
So we might do something like that, or mix the two together for an episode. So thank you again for joining us, guys. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do hit the notification button as well. Make sure you hit all so you don't miss any of the episodes, any of the videos we put out. We do have some videos coming out. Trying to get to them. We're very, very busy right now. We've got a lot of stuff going on. We got a lot of products that we have sold out of that we're getting back in. Transmission 6R80 fittings are back in stock. Control packs, as far as the Gen 1 and our body harness stuff, will be back in stock end of this month, so in the next week or two, or actually next week. And we'll be filling a bunch of orders there too. Dakota Digital is finally shipping clusters again. There's there's a lot of stuff. We are experiencing a lot of business right now, and it's because of the following we've generated here with you guys and your support. So thank you very, very much. Hats very, very soon. Hopefully in the next week or two. Frank, video on your car. Okay. So we'll do a video on my car. I'll try to get some pictures, some under the car stuff on top, inside, that kind of stuff, and then kind of ball it into the live broadcast and so forth. So thank you again. Thank you for the feedback on the mic. Sounds like this worked out just fine. The headphones were a waste. So maybe we'll get better ones. Alex, thank you for joining and helping out.
I got you.
And owe you dinner or maybe some more coffee. So we'll go from there. Thank you again, guys. We're going to sign off for now. We'll see you next Wednesday. If you haven't done it already, visit pbhperformance.com and follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram. Have a good one.